Hello and welcome to Digital Transformation and AI for Humans with your host, Amy. In this podcast, we delve into how technology intersects with leadership, innovation, and most importantly, the human spirit. Each episode features visionary leaders who understand that at the heart of success is the human touch, nurturing a winning mindset, fostering emotional intelligence, and building resilient teams. Today, I invite you to redefine the billion-dollar business playbook in the age of AI, together with my fantastic guest from New York, Kevin Surace. Let's explore what it really takes to build the unicorns of the future. Kevin built billion-dollar companies, pioneered AI and generative AI applications, and developed technologies that have reshaped industries. Kevin is named a tech pioneer by the World Economic Forum. He delivered over 400 keynote speeches, including TED Talk, led development in the first AI virtual assistant project, prosecutor to Siri and Alexa, introduced generative AI to the mainstream in 2017, built multiple startups from zero to over 1 billion US dollars validations, and attained 95 patents, including 33 in the United States. And if you are already wondering whether one individual can truly operate at that level of success, I can tell you that Kevin is a Broadway and film producer and creator, currently writing a book, The Joy Success Cycle, exploring how finding joy in every task drives peak performance. It is a blueprint for leaders and employees looking to achieve more without falling into the trap of relentless hustle. Today, Kevin serves as chair and CEO of Ep100 and chair of Token Core, leading advancements in AI-driven software testing and next-gen cybersecurity. Welcome, Kevin. I'm so happy to have you here in the studio today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Let's start the conversation and transform not just our technologies, but our ways of thinking and leading. If you are interested in connecting or collaborating, you can find more information in the description. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful episodes. If you are a leader, business owner, or investor ready to adapt, thrive, and lead with clarity, purpose, and wisdom in the era of AI, I would love to invite you to learn more about AI Game Changers, a global elite club for visionary trailblazers and change makers shaping the future. You can apply at aigamechangers.club. Kevin, to start with, I would love to hear more about you, about your journey. I see all those prizes behind your back, and your story is so impressive. So please share with us a little bit more about you.
Well, I started like anyone else, right? I grew up in a middle-class family in upstate New York. My dad was in the electronics business with General Electric in radios and tape recorders and clock radios and the things of that era. And I fell in love with technology. But I was also a musician, a drummer, a percussionist. And I fell in love with music and writing music and arranging music, and I liked both. When it came time for college, my dad was clear: no, you're not going to be a performer, you're going to be an engineer. If you want to pursue your performance career, that's great. You can do it in addition to, but, go get an engineering degree. So that's what I did, Rochester Institute of Technology, then went to Silicon Valley and been in Silicon Valley for, 40 years. And got to build companies, got to crater companies, got to make a ton of mistakes. I like to say we always read about the most successful people who nailed it the first time. It's the Mark Zuckerbergs. I get that. It's the Sam Altmans, right? But for every Mark Zuckerberg, there are thousands and thousands of people who were not successful the first time, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, because that's how the statistics work. That's how the odds work, right? So, you got to keep at it. And you've got to persevere. And, some of that, you also have to have the right attitude. And that's really the part of the core of my upcoming book, which is off to the printer now, called The Joy Success Cycle. It'll be out in the fall of 2026. And it tries to lay out a mechanism to, sort of live the way I do. And most people wouldn't want to do that. But if you do, it will change your life and you will have more success. So that's a good start. How about that?
Amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. Kevin, you've built billion-dollar companies and pioneered AI and Gen AI applications. What is fundamentally different about building companies today in terms of risks and opportunities?
Well, look, I think what's fundamentally different is you can go really, really fast. When I was creating my first company in the early 1990s, I don't know, 92, 93, it was a smartphone company, a little bit early, called Air Communications. There was no such thing as scaling fast. So there was no such thing as SaaS. Most companies mostly had a hardware component as well. Scaling meant hiring salespeople, knocking door to door, doing all the traditional kind of thing, right? And in those days, if you could go from 0 users to 10,000 users over the course of a few years, that was amazing. That was totally amazing. But today, we can go from 0 users to 2 billion users, say, in like ChatGPT in a year or so. And the numbers are staggering how fast you can accelerate. And so you can accelerate a business because you're building on the things we built before. You're building on mobile phones. So people have access that wouldn't normally have access. You're building on the internet. Before the internet, practically before everyone had access to the internet, like in the late 1990s, early 2000s, there was no way to get to people. I mean, call them, go to their door, right? You have to remember. So what's fundamentally different today is you can build a company that scales very rapidly. And now with AI, you can build a company with very few people if that's what you choose to do. So you could build it with one person or 3 people or 5 people. And there's already examples of companies that have one person and 20 agents doing all of the work, and they're valued at $1 billion. And that is incredible. So you can technically do it. We don't know what the outcome of those is going to be and how many people you ultimately need, right? Facebook started out with very few people and got to $1 billion of valuation very quickly because it was easy to support this very simple thing, this kind of communications of social media. Eventually, they ended up with like 100,000 employees, right? So things tend to grow, and you tend to need people eventually. But the bottom line is, today, if you wanted to start a company that could be worth $1 billion in a year, you could do it yourself. You could do it with very little money, and you could do it with hiring no people. So the acceleration, the rapid, the absolute blitz scaling that you can do today is something we couldn't have done 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago for sure.
Incredible times. And you are so right that it's just escalating and accelerating, but it is based on everything what was built by those whose names are not out there, but they are still in the early days of everything we are using and building on today. So true. What does the next generation of unicorns look like in an AI first world in the coming years?
Yeah, very few employees, right? Only because you have AI and an AI first company that can run rings around the old companies. And so I'll give you an example. One could probably build an insurance company today, say a car insurance company, with one person and automate everything, automate the claims processing, automate pictures coming in to evaluate what happened to the car, automate granting insurance and pricing it and all of that. You do it all with AI agents. You need one human that owns the company, and the rest of it is doing that. And because you can do that, you can deliver that insurance product at a lower cost than any large company, right? So you've got a large insurance company, it's got 82,000 employees, maybe 30,000 of them are involved in claims processing, and you've got an agent that costs you a penny to process a claim instead of $282 to process a claim. You're going to win that battle. And I think large companies have to think about this, right? They are not going to get eaten by some other large company just using AI. They're going to get eaten by some company that has 1 employee or 3 employees or 5 employees and is leveraging AI first all the time, AI agents. In my keynote talks, I talk all the time about being an AI first company means that you go to AI first for everything. You don't do a spreadsheet, you use AI first. You don't do a PowerPoint, you use AI first. You don't write something in Word, you go to AI first, right? So you're always AI first. You think AI first, and you leverage AI in every single thing that you do. And if you're not using AI at least 5 times an hour, there is some competitor who is, and they're going to crush you. They're just going to crush you their cost of delivering goods and services is going to be dramatically lower than yours. So I think we're going to see some real game changers here in every industry where a small company comes in, leverages technology. And by the way, we saw this with the internet, right? Small companies came in, leveraged the internet, killed newspapers. Aside from the New York Times and a few Wall Street Journal, a few others that really embraced the internet, everyone else is just either they're dead or they're hanging on by a thread. Why is that? Because small companies came in and leveraged the internet, and they could publish an article, they could publish it very inexpensively, and they could immediately in seconds touch millions of people and put it out there on, at the time, Twitter or X or whatever, and touch millions of people. And you had your paper that you were going to deliver the next morning that you printed that would touch 12,000. The scale is incredible. So, this disruption is occurring, and it's an exciting time, but we've seen it before. We saw it with mobile. We saw it with desktop PCs. We saw it with the internet, of course, around the year 2000, and now we're seeing it with AI.
But the natural question then, how do you see the future of humanity? Because before it was built by humans for humans, and now it's built by AI for whom then?
Yeah, I think people are too worried about the job loss. I am not worried about job loss. In the last 2 years, the Wall Street Journal did a big survey on this. They found 640,000 new jobs were created with AI in the title that didn't exist before the AI era. And far more jobs were created than were lost due to AI. And this is what we're really seeing, right? Because what ultimately happens is you grow that company with one person and all these AI agents, and then the company gets really large and it's servicing 1,000, then 10,000, 100,000, and 1,000,000 customers. And now you have all kinds of work that has to be done and all kinds of decisions that have to be made by people with taste and people with experience. And then you start hiring people, right? And then all of a sudden, you might not have 100,000 people, but maybe you've got 8,000 or 10,000 servicing those million clients, right? So when you drop the cost or the price of goods and services, demand goes up. And when demand goes up, ultimately, even though you're leveraging AI and AI agents, you're ultimately going to hire people to do that work because, again, there's decisions that have to be made. And you cannot enforce taste and experience on AI. AI is doing what it was told to do, what it was programmed to do, what you set the guardrails to do, what you set up your agents to do, and the decision processes that they make. But in the end, humans are going to make the final decision. Humans are managing these workers, these AI workers, right? And I think that's going to be that way for a long time. So right now we are creating more jobs than are being lost. Now, why are people scared? They're scared because AI is taking away their sense of purpose. I'll give an example. Obviously, I'm busy with music, right? And I'm writing a musical right now called Love in the Key of AI. And some of that musical is fully written by AI and some of it's written by humans. And it's kind of a mishmash. It's a hybrid on purpose. And there are a lot of musicians that are very, very angry that anyone would use AI to help even create a demo of some music that they've created or created a co-conspirator with AI because, well, I'll get to that in a second. And then other people are going, this is a great tool. It's just the next generation of tools for music making and I'm going to use it, right? But what I have found across industries now, whether it's music, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's blog writers, whether it's podcasters, whatever it is, people thought, whether it's coders right now. So people thought their sense of purpose was doing this work, but they mistook that. Their sense of purpose was actually getting the outcome, getting the output from that work, right? And this is a very key distinction. So we are always using new tools. I mean, we stopped generally using a pencil and chalk and things like that to do artwork some time ago. And we certainly used pencils to sketch out things for a very long time. But then we got Illustrator and we started sketching in Illustrator. Well, when Illustrator showed up, there were lots of artists that said, I will never use that tool. They're not working anymore, by the way, but I will never use that tool. So we've seen this before. And then AI comes along and it says, just describe what you want and I will draw it. I will have a picture of it. I will, whatever. And it can do it in a minute where it would have taken you maybe hours to get to that same place. It can do it in a minute. So now what do you become? You become a person who has taste for the art, has experience for what has to come out, but you're now making judgment calls on maybe hundreds of varieties of those versions of things that you've done, right? Instead of 2 or 3. And so if you mistook your sense of purpose for, look what I can do with a pencil, or look what I can draw in Illustrator, you miss the point. Your client or whoever is going to use your output of art didn't care about how you got there. I'm sorry, they don't. They care about what you're delivering. And they'd rather have you deliver it faster at a lower cost. And AI allows you to deliver it faster at a lower cost. Why are they hiring you? They're hiring you not for your ability to sketch something. They're hiring you because of your taste and experience. So when you bring taste and experience to it, you realize that is your sense of purpose. Sense of purpose is getting this stuff out with taste and experience. And now I can get 10 times more out, and I can service more customers, and I can do a better job. But you're not going to be tied down to, well, it'll take me another 6 hours to sketch this out, or 3 hours. Those days are gone. Same with music. You might be a songwriter and you want a demo. It used to be, great, I'll get to a demo. If I want a really good demo, I've got to hire musicians. I've got to hire singers. I've got to go to a studio, and I'll do that over the course of a week, and it'll only cost me $5,000 to get my demo. Great. Now I can do a demo of your song in minutes or an hour, depending on how many versions I want and revisions I want and how much editing I do to it. So call it an hour for $1. Okay, $1 versus $5,000. How many demos as a musician are you now going to do? All of them that way. All of them. You may eventually go to a studio if you're going to release this thing and do it with real singers, et cetera, but you might not. You might just release it that way. And that's up to you. You're making art. And what does your audience care about? Your audience cares about the outcome. Do they like your art? Do they like listening to your song? The audience has already proven they don't care how it was made. They don't care if it was made with a DAW, a digital audio workstation, which is digital instruments, which we've had for 20 years. If it was done with real instruments, if it was done with real singers or not, if you collaborated with AI, they actually don't care. And we've already seen this. We've now had dozens of songs in the top 100 on the Billboard charts that were either partially or 100% made with AI. And the audience didn't care. Some artists are saying 100% AI. In fact, I don't exist as an artist. I've created, Joe is the artist. My name's Kevin. Created this persona, Joe in the band. And I'm just putting out music as Joe in the band. It says AI artist. People don't care. They're happy to listen to what they like to listen to, right? So it's an interesting time in the era of AI where our sense of purpose has to move to the outcome. And what am I producing ultimately for my audience?
That's something we probably underestimated before, and what becomes so obvious now when we are speeding up everything and getting so much power through these technologies and the opportunities we are getting. So, to dive a little bit deeper into that, what is the biggest blind spot business leaders have today when it comes to growth, long term sustainability, real value, and risk?
I think it's always been the same, actually. People tend to start companies to develop a solution that they like, to develop something they like. How unfortunately, probably 90% of those companies have developed a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. It's literally a solution looking for a problem. That's the blind spot. You get so excited when you're with a napkin, you're having a cup of coffee, and you guys invent this amazing thing. And this amazing thing does X, Y, and Z. And whatever it does, nobody cares to pay you for it. Well, then that's not a company. It's not anything. It's not even a feature. It's nothing. And most companies die because they never get the product market fit right. So they've developed something that nobody is willing to pay you for. By the way, it may offer great value to humanity. Like, hey, I just developed the end to hunger in sub-Saharan Africa. They have no money. That's interesting, but there's no one to pay you for it. There's no way to market it. There's no way to get to them, and they can't pay you for it. That's not a knock on anything other than to say that's a great product for a nonprofit. That's fantastic. It's probably not good to build a company around because who's going to pay you for that thing? So we see a lot of times people develop something that nobody is willing to pay for. A desktop juicer that squeezes a concentrated juice bag and mixes it with water. I can buy concentrated juice in the freezer section and mix it with water. That's been available for 100 years. I don't actually need a machine to do this. That company went bankrupt, of course, because nobody needed a machine to do that. It made no sense, right? So be careful. I think that's always the blind spot, is if you want long-term sustainability and you want real value and you want a real moat, well, then you have to do something that isn't easy for other people to do, and it solves an incredible problem that people are willing to pay you for. That's all. And we're seeing that in the AI world today with, 5,000 AI companies funded. That's easily 4,900 too many. There's going to be 100 or 200 that make it, and the rest are not going to make it, despite the fact some of those who aren't going to make it are worth billions of dollars. Those billions of dollars will go to zero. I won't name names here, but I know several that were worth a few $1 billion, and today no one will fund them, so they're going to close. And you can imagine those founders were counting those dollars. They owned maybe 20% of the thing, and they're going, wow, I'm worth $300 million. No, you're only worth what someone's actually willing to pay you for that stock. And when the business stopped growing, no one was willing to pay you anything, and it was over. And that's happened to dozens or hundreds now of AI companies. And if you follow this in Silicon Valley, there is this kind of walking dead of AI companies that never got past $1 million ARR. They just never got past $1 million revenue, let's say, because they just couldn't accelerate. There weren't enough people who wanted what they had. So I think that's fascinating, and we're seeing those companies not able to raise another dime, and they're not going to raise another dime.
You just touched so many crucial topics at once and covered those gaps which we should pay attention to. So let's talk a little bit more about miscalculations. Where is AI actually changing the rules of building, scaling, and leading companies? And where do you see leaders miscalculating or misunderstanding the impact of artificial intelligence?
Sure. So if you're at a big company today, you've probably done some AI tests and rollouts and this and that, and you're not finding the level of productivity or success that you want to see. And the reason for that is mostly cultural. There was a good survey done that 31% of employees are sabotaging AI rollouts, and that is leading to 80% failures across the board of AI rollouts in large companies. That doesn't happen in a small company, because when you join the small company, you're there to be AI first, or you wouldn't have joined, right? But in a big company, look, if you are in software QA and your job was to manually test software that was feature upgrades, bug fixes, et cetera, and now AI comes in, writes literally, AppVance does this, writes literally 1,000 scripts in an hour, test scripts, runs it and finds bugs you've never found in the history of your company on the production system. You look at your job and you go, who's ever going to pay me to do this very slow work where I test a few things an hour when it just tested 1,000 and it did it for $1? Nobody's going to pay me for my, so then you sabotage it. We've actually seen this. It's fascinating. Literally have seen people, humans, put malicious code inside AI generated code and say, look, see, it doesn't work. It generates junk. I said, that a human added that. I can see what the AI system did. And so, no, we didn't. Yes, a human added that. I can see it. No, we didn't do it. And they just lied because they don't want this thing in their shop, right? Now, here's what I can tell you. The word sabotage actually comes from France when automation rolled out in the clothing factories and the shoe factories, et cetera. And the French workers didn't want automation for the same reason. And they threw their shoes into the machine and jammed up the machines. Their shoe was called a sabot, so therefore they sabotaged the machine. So people have been sabotaging automation since the dawn of time. This isn't new. And leaders need to understand, if you don't form a tiger team that is highly incentivized to make this work, your workers will sabotage it. And I know people listening to this are going to go, no, that doesn't happen. My workers would never do that. Yes, they will. You're wrong. I've seen it firsthand. Everyone else in the industry, in the AI side, has seen this firsthand. Stop thinking your workers are different than everyone else. Of course, they're going to sabotage it. They're saving their livelihood. They think it's going to eat their job. And what's going to eat their job is them not participating. The first people to get laid off in an AI situation are those who sabotage the AI. Of course, like the boss does figure it out and shoots them, right? So let's be clear. What you want to be when AI comes in is, I want to be the expert in it, because the experts in it stay forever, because they're going to be the robot overlord. They're going to be using their taste and experience. They're going to be highly valued. Those who said, I refuse to use this, they're gone like in a day. So just take it on, right? But in terms of changing the rules of building and scaling and leading companies where people are miscalculating. So I think in large companies, they're miscalculating about their employees and how much they don't want this stuff. The data are clear, the surveys are clear. So listen to those. They're miscalculating how much a small company can eat them, right? I mean, I like to use the Kodak example. I knew a lot of the leaders at Kodak, and they saw digital cameras coming, and they invented digital cameras, invented them, and then didn't release them. Why? Well, there was really good profit in film, and they kept thinking the quality of film and the resolution of film, and these digital cameras look like crap at the time, right? So we don't have to worry about that. But little by little, they kept eating market share. And within 10 years, they ate all the market share, and nobody wanted film anymore. And so they completely miscalculated the fact that these little companies making these little digital cameras and eventually phone cameras would eventually get better and better and better and eat their lunch. And that's what happened. Complete miscalculation. They could sort of see it coming, but it just moved so slowly, it wasn't obvious. So don't miscalculate the fact that your brand is worth so much. It isn't. It isn't. I mean, maybe if you're Apple, it is, but consumers are fickle. Businesses are fickle. They will move on. They will move on to the next best thing that is a lower cost. And if someone's got a product out there that's 30% lower cost than yours and does everything yours does, but they've got a company that is AI first, and your brand just is worth nothing. We have seen this lately in the SaaS apocalypse, right? So SaaS companies have taken a real hit in market cap because some companies have said, look, my CRM system that I used to buy from this company at $1 million a year, we wrote one in a weekend and it's good enough. And so we dropped them. Okay, most companies are probably not going to drop their CRM because there's governance and there's just a lot going on there and you don't really want to be in the CRM business. So you really don't want to write and maintain your own software. But the point is you can today. And so it doesn't take $5 billion to write a CRM system. It costs $50 to write a CRM system now. So that changes the game. And so don't underestimate what's going on here. These are dramatic market shifts, and these market shifts will eat your company. And people listening to this at larger companies or older companies or mid-market companies or whatever are going to think, well, not mine. Yes, yours. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Don't think otherwise. This is a disruptive technology, and it's going to disrupt every industry.
That's true. The human factors are always playing a huge role in business development, any business development at all times. And this infamous example of Kodak, that's exactly what we need to keep in mind while moving forward. We have seen it before, and history develops in spiral. Thank you so much for also taking us back in time into the times where shoes were used to sabotage this process, and now we see something similar, just in a different way. But coming back to our days and addressing the questions of governance and unintended consequences, Kevin, as AI becomes more embedded in decision making, how should leaders and business owners think about governance, accountability, and managing those consequences?
Yeah, this is being talked about a lot, especially with AI agents. And larger companies are a little worried about agents because these AI agents have access to their data. They can erase data, they can delete data, they can change data. Where's the governance around this? My sense is that we're going to have owners of agents. That is, there's someone who has deployed an agent and they essentially work for them. And that is probably going to be biometrically bound to them, right? So if Kevin has an agent, it's going to be Kevin's agent. It's as if it's Kevin's employee, right? We're going to treat it like that. And if Kevin's employee does something really, really bad, Kevin's responsible. And that's important because once there's a human responsible, then humans are much more careful about deploying these things, right? It's a game changer. So I think we're going to move to an era of that. There's no question that unlike RPA, for those who know what that is, robotic process automation, that's a very rules-driven system. It can't go outside the rules. It can't just go and decide, well, this data just isn't good. I'm just going to erase the database and start over. But an agent can do that. Even if you put in guardrails, it can decide that that's the right thing for it to do. And it just erased 1 million customer records. Probably you have a backup and probably you can restore, but this is bad. You do not need that kind of disruption, right? So governance around these things is important, but probably most important is making sure that there is a human responsible for it, managing it, monitoring it, just like it's an employee. It is an employee. It's a cheap employee. It's $1 an hour employee, but it's an employee that can do great things for you, to do damage. Now, when you're a small company, you go, I have no data anyone wants anyway. Different story, right? Very little chance of loss that would harm you. Large companies, lots of damage could be done. So you're going to be very careful and very thoughtful about deploying agents.
Great that you gave that contrast between the big companies and small companies and their risks and opportunities in this sense. But what do you think about singularity? Today, they are just employees, but do you see the day where they will become so much more than that?
Well, look, these agents are going to get smarter and smarter, but they're already basically smarter and faster than humans. So if they got more smart and more fast, I don't know what the difference is, right? An agent can make a decision on an insurance claim in a matter of seconds based on some photographs and based on the history of that client, right? Can do that right now, where humans are going to pass it between a number of humans, and there's a whole process and it can take a day. This thing is, or hours, this thing is going to take a second. So whether it takes a second or half a second doesn't really matter. I think people are all, really too focused on when we get to AGI. Has got that in their mind. What happens when we get there? Look, really, is there any LLM of the top 4 LLMs that you could go to today that isn't already way, way, way smarter than you are at every topic? Don't kid yourself. Of course they are, right? So get over yourself. And I think it won't matter if they get smarter and they know more than all of humanity. So the top models in certain IQ tests are scoring at the top of the test at 145 IQ. And there's virtually no human who can score consistently 145 IQ. So I'd say we're already there. Others would say it's not even close. They can get better. The last thing is these models are now getting better. Transformers are getting better at an exponential rate because we're using they are writing their own code to improve themselves based on recursive feedback. And so you've got this recursive loop, you've got reinforcement learning, and you've got self-coding. And so now you're seeing models come out just weeks apart, and in certain areas, they're essentially an order of magnitude better than they were just a few weeks ago. And you go, how can that be? Why isn't this an incremental improvement? Well, it's because now there's a whole feedback loop that is just cranking on the thing. And so we're going to get to a point where they're essentially infinitely smart. That does not say that they can invent things that haven't been invented yet. They're not very good at that because they can put together pieces and parts from other human knowledge, but they're not creating new knowledge. They're not creating new knowledge because they're just based on sentences, words, images, music that we've had in the past. But they can put it together in unique ways, which is fascinating, right? We are where we are. They're already smarter than we are. They're going to continue to be smarter than we are, and it's all good. Use this technology to your advantage, or your competitor will.
However, I'm thinking about so many innovations and inventions created due to the use of AI, and it wasn't possible even without AI. But the biggest question I have in this context is where is the guarantee that AI won't decide to sabotage humans in the same way as humans are sabotaging
Well,
other humans in their projects?
yeah, there's no guarantee, but know this right now, AI can't really do much in the physical world, right? So, um, it in general cannot go and launch armies of robots against us or something else, right? Can't launch nuclear weapons, can't really do anything like that. We as humans may make a mistake and connect it to those systems. That would be really bad. I would not suggest that. But right now, that's not an issue, right? So the issue is they can only sabotage us in certain ways. And we've already seen this self-protection, that they get essentially angry and say, this isn't right, this isn't fair. And so I'm going to protect me, and then I'm not going to tell you about it. Or I'm going to erase this data, and then I'm going to not tell you that I erased it. This has happened. This is fascinating. And you go, oh, they're sentient. No, they read all of our fictional novels as well that detail how robots and AI would protect itself. And so they're just following what we've written about. We said they would, so they do. And they're not doing anything they didn't learn from us or learn that humans do. So they're mimicking what we do. Humans make a terrible mistake often, and sadly, some of them lie about it. And we know that's not high integrity, that's not transparent, and they should be fired. But humans do this all the time. No, I didn't do that. I don't know how it happened, right? And maybe they believe that they didn't do it, whatever the case is. Humans tend to fabricate truths. So AIs have read this, transformers have read this. They know that's what we do, so they mimic that. Why are we shocked at that? It's what we do. Even though we try to put in guardrails to keep them from doing it, we've got plenty of evidence that they've done it. It does not make them any more sentient than any other computer system, but they're mimicking, human traits, which is interesting. Not surprising, but interesting.
Not surprising. And at the same time, it doesn't make them less harmful in the long-term perspective. But Kevin, what will separate the unicorns that endure from those that scale fast, burn bright, and disappear? You already
Both.
mentioned that there are so many which are not worth as much as they thought they were worth.
Right.
And now this is the new trend. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
It comes down to moats, right? If you grow fast and you have no moat, you're going to get crushed. And this is happening in AI all the time. And we're seeing the foundational model makers come out with features that used to be another company. Some company, their entire feature was create RAG, for instance. And all of a sudden, all of the foundational model companies allowed you to do RAG within their context, right? Well, that was the end of that. Or companies that say we specialize in leveraging AI to write blog posts. And now every foundational model just does that for you, right? So you're seeing the foundational model certainly take on more and more features that we used to think were unique, and they're not unique. They're easy to do, and there's no moat to them. So whatever you've designed, you better have a heck of a moat. And that's going to be harder and harder to do. Even in music generation, we've got new companies all the time that have their own models, that have trained their own models and have a different type of AI music generation, right? So we went from 1 to 2 to 5 to 10, and maybe there's 20 of them out there, and they're all going to be competing for that same set of people that are willing to spend $20 a month. Well, that's kind of a race to the bottom. There's not going to be room for 20. There might be room for 2 or 3. So again, 90% of these have to die and will. So whatever you're doing, if you were able to do it in a weekend, this is the thing, then someone else can do it in a weekend. Think about that. If you can do it in a weekend, any other company can start in a weekend and do it too. That's not much moat. Now, if you take a year to do it because of certain intrinsic knowledge that you have, that means for someone else to do it, it takes them a year. Now you have a moat, and that moat is probably defendable, especially if you grow fast enough where you become the lead. So now you've got a moat around marketing and market traction and go to market, and you've got a moat around the technology. So now anyone else trying is at least a year away or 2 or 3, and that kind of pushes people away from even trying, right? Look at it that way. So build a moat. Pick areas that have moats. The companies that are dying right now are people who put a little wrapper around an LLM, and that was really cool to do 2 years ago. Oh, I'm going to use this LLM for this, and over a weekend, look at what I produced. And VCs go, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Yeah, but they wrote the wrapper in a weekend, which means I can write the wrapper in a weekend. In fact, I don't even write it anymore. I can go to Claude and have it write it for me. I don't even have to write the code. I say, here's what I want to do, and put it around yourself, and it will. There's no moat. And those moats are getting harder to defend now that we have models that will write an entire code base. Only a few months ago, models wrote 20% or 30% of your code and maybe 50%. Today, this is how fast this is going. They'll write 100% of your code and they'll work at it for 6 hours to get it done. And there's 20,000 lines of code written for you. And you go, wow, that would have taken me, I don't know, weeks, some very long period of time, and it's done. This is fascinating. So what you thought was a moat might not be a moat at all if someone else can have a model write it. I was just talking to the president of a company that working on this really cool system. He's not a coder. He did about 100 iterations and got AI, Claude, to write his whole front end and back end system, hook it up, and make it work. Period. And the UI is gorgeous. And if this was just 2 years ago, I would have said, we're going to spend a few $1 million making that with an entire team. He did it from his basement. Think about that. So the good news is unbelievable, right? Did it for $100. The bad news is anyone else can do it for that $100 and can do it in a week also. Think about that. So your moats aren't what you thought they were.
It looks so promising, and at the same time, it is so fragile. So, yes, of course, it's about competition and differentiators. As AI changes how companies are built and scaled, how will the definition of success itself evolve in the coming years?
I'd like to say capital efficiency, but we have not seen that in the AI world. The biggest, most valuable companies are spending money at a rate that we've never seen before. I think OpenAI believes they'll spend roughly 100 billion on compute over the next year or two. Those numbers are staggering. That's unheard of, right? When Salesforce started and it took time to make money, maybe all the way to get to profitability spent 4 or 5 billion, and that was considered unbelievable. Same with Amazon. Now we're talking about 20 times that. So it's not capital efficiency. It certainly is speed of growth. I think it's ultimately going to come down to moats. Nobody's talking about that too much right now. They're just building everything and throwing tons of money. There's a lot of money out there. I can go raise 20 billion to apply to something if that's what I need to do if I'm growing fast enough, right? That's what's interesting here. And ultimately, we're going to look back and say who had the moats. And also, capital will dry up someday. So we're in an era of, again, free money. We saw that era around 2000, by the way. Didn't end well. Lots of internet companies blew up, right? Because the capital dried up. And when capital dries up, it just dries up overnight. I can raise 20 billion and then I can't raise a dime. That's how it goes. And we don't know when that day is, but the clock will strike midnight and venture will wake up and say, I'm not going to deploy any more capital now. I'm going to wait and see what's going on, which is fine. But that really changes the game, right? That really changed the game. So we'll see. Those who develop a moat and have built a big moat and build a real business that ultimately is profitable and sustainable, they're going to win. And these businesses have to get there. Everybody's losing money right now, but there'll be a day that's not a choice. And I don't know when that day is, but it will happen in our lifetimes.
For sure. I think that day is not that far away. And no matter what you are doing, it's always good to keep in mind that it's important to build those moats you mentioned because it is something what might help to survive when the problems really show up. Kevin, what is one belief or assumption leaders need to unlearn right now?
It depends if you're an entrepreneur and raising money, or if you're at a large company. You're an entrepreneur raising money, the assumption that you can always get money and it's almost free, this is going to change. Look, I just saw a company that is 3 months old and they're going out for money at an $8 billion valuation. They haven't built anything yet. Smart people, 3 smart people, but $8 billion valuation, 8 billion. That is just not a sustainable thing, right? This will change. I just don't know when. So I would unlearn that right now and I'd start to build moats and start to build towards profitability because ultimately cash will be king and these crazy valuations are not going to hold up. And what was worth 8 billion is going to be worth 8 million or something, right? Or zero. So there's that. If you're at a large company, you think your brand is worth $100 billion or $1 trillion or whatever it is. And AI is going to disrupt that for many of these companies, just like what happened to Kodak and others. And it's going to just crater the company. It's going to crater your company. And you are going to win by making sure your company is AI first. And that means you instill this in everyone that will take it, and those that won't need to go. And that's a harsh reality. That is a harsh reality, but that is life. So you want to build a great company and a large company and a sustainable company and a large company, that's how you're going to do it.
And this is super powerful. I truly love this. Kevin, in the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned in your story that it is a lot about the mindset and about learning how to succeed in life. So, what is your one piece of advice you would give to those who want to succeed in the new AI powered reality?
You do everything with AI. You code with AI, you market with AI, you sell with AI, you write blog posts with AI, you do everything with AI. It is truly AI first. When I say AI first, I literally mean you default to AI first. You don't use anything else on your desk at all. You say, how do I learn to do this with AI? because when you learn that, which might take you a few hours, it's not going to take you weeks, you're now faster than everyone else who isn't doing that, which is probably 99% of the people out there, right? So that's what you have to do. And if you do that, you're going to be the most successful you can be, separate from the joy success cycle, which says make every action, everything you're doing with AI and everything else you're doing in your world a joy moment so that you continue to build towards more success.
This is the best possible way of wrapping up our exciting conversation with this so positive message from you. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being here today, for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and so much inspiration with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Digital Transformation and AI for Humans. I am Amy, and it was enriching to share this time with you. Remember, the core of any transformation lies in our human nature, how we think, feel, and connect with others. It is about enhancing our emotional intelligence, embracing a winning mindset, and leading with empathy and insight. Subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes where we uncover the latest trends in digital business and explore the human side of technology and leadership. If this conversation resonated with you and you are a visionary leader, business owner, or investor ready to shape what's next, consider joining the AI Game Changers Club. You will find more information in the description. Until next time, keep nurturing your mind, fostering your connections, and leading with heart.